She doesn't want like the lovey-dovey rose petals like gently laying you down onto the pillow like, oh, can I touch you here? No.
For somebody watching right now, what do you think the most beneficial, high leverage activity they can do to overcome that approach anxiety?
She'll cheat on him or leave him for a dude who treats her like a piece of shit. And here's why that happens.
Welcome back, everybody. Today, I got Stirling Cooper. How are we doing, man?
I'm good, Frank. I'm
good. For anybody that doesn't know you, why don't you do a quick intro, let them know who you are and what you're doing currently.
Right. I guess the quickest way to describe me is I'm a sex coach. I'm a retired porn star. I like to use the phrase retired and repenting. I used to be a porn star. I also used to be a high-class male companion. So I was in the adult industry for a while, and I've transferred that sort of skill set of performing under pressure, shall we say, to helping the average guy be a better lover and, perform consistently.
Okay, so you were once in the industry for how many years?
In porn specifically for 5.
5 years, half a decade. Okay.
Yeah.
Before I jump into any questions, I couldn't help but ask then. I know you've worked many jobs, right?
Yes.
So out of all the jobs that you've worked then, what do you think has been the one that has taught you the most about female nature?
Probably being a high-class male companion, also known as an escort. Okay. This was back when I was in Australia, because my clients were like wealthy businesswomen, and they're a lot lonelier than people would think. And you start to realize, like, well, why you start thinking, well, why would that woman be lonely? She got lots of money, she got everything she wants, she can fly anywhere she wants, buy anything she wants, etc. Like, isn't this what every woman has been told, that, oh, you go boss babe, you get your career and all that sort of stuff, you'll be happy.
Lie.
And they're not happy. And it's like, I wonder why that is. It's because they can't find a man who makes them feel loved.
That and probably meets their standard, right?
Bingo.
Because the more a girl makes, as we know, like the lower their dating pool gets and smaller it gets.
Unfortunately, yeah. And especially like I for example had one client. She was like a deca millionaire from China. She got to the point at the extreme end of it where she couldn't really trust anybody because everybody just wanted to use her for her money, not just like anyone she tried to date, but also her family. And so put her in this really awkward, like lonely position. And it was like, damn, it was not a very nice, kind of insight, but it was an insight nonetheless into how women have been sold a lie. Very much so.
Modern day feminism, essentially.
Yeah.
They become that boss babe, that bitch.
Yeah.
And they just don't have the same fucking experience as a guy does that is traditionally high value. Yeah,
I think guys who kind of end up becoming hyper entrepreneurs, like your hyper successful types, they love it. It's the thrill of the game. They get addicted to it in a way. Yeah. I don't think women really have that in them as much. That super innate competitive drive.
I don't think so either, because they're not built for that, essentially. And if you're watching this getting offended, click off the video. I don't want you here anyways.
I want you being offended. Good. Get fired up and insult me. I love it.
No, yeah. I mean, it's just like most women, even the girls that are career girls that fall into that place, when they achieve that level, they're like, wait a minute, this is not what I thought it was going to be.
I mean, you see a lot of them here in Miami.
Very true.
I used to date some of them. Now, 2 years later, 3 years later, they're still posting the same stories every weekend on their Instagram. Like, oh, it's them and their mid-30s girlfriends all on a boat partying. Woo! Still no boyfriend, still no ring. And it's like, and I'm not trying to be a dick saying that. I'm just,
just pointing out the obvious, because that's what most girls want.
And I think they are getting to the realization as well, where it's obvious. Yeah, it's like there's only so long that a woman can like lead that lifestyle of the boss bitch lifestyle and not see that they were sold a lie. I think.
Yeah, I think a lot of them cope with it.
Completely cope.
Yeah, they're just like, they will double down on it because that's how far they've gotten doing the same thing, and then they don't want to admit that they're wrong.
I completely agree. Yeah, the doubling down is intense, especially in a place like Miami. Yeah.
Okay, then before we jump too far into details, I know we're in the first 5-10 minutes of the pod. How about we take it back to your backstory in terms of you getting into the space? I personally don't know that. So let's jump into basically how you got into the online space, from being an escort to then a porn star, and what made you transition into being a digital personal brand.
Yeah. Well, I got disillusioned with the adult industry. I'll say that much. That was sort of around 2020. A lot of things kind of serendipitously happened. COVID happened. The industry shut down for a while. That point, I'd actually been writing a book. You know when you don't really have a deadline for something, you just drag it out forever. Well, the deadline came because the income stopped. I couldn't go out and make any money anymore. So I finished my first book, put it out there. Everyone started buying it. It was basically like a compilation of biohacks from my work in the adult industry. Did pretty well. Within 2 months, I'd replaced my income. And simultaneously, while that had happened, like I said, I got disillusioned with the industry. I'd begun to notice how man-hating it was. It was very, very cancel culture heavy. It's a very feminist-led industry. It's a very, very woke industry. People are often very surprised to hear that the porn industry is like that, but it is. And kind of got sick of not being able to really speak my mind. I'm a big, for example, at least at that point, I was a big Trump guy. I couldn't really go to people. You'd go to set and everyone would be like bashing Trump. Yeah. This is like 2020, and I was like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, go Trump, yes. But you can't. If I said something like out loud, cancelled, career over, etc. And it's like, well, look, I could wait for them to cancel me, or I could just cancel myself.
Just get out.
Just get out of the way.
Yeah.
And just go do it. And that's what I did. And I ended up pursuing the YouTube angle. Actually, what happened first, I got on guys like Rollo Tomasi and Rich Cooper. They had me on their channel to talk about like the inside of things like OnlyFans, because that had just become a household name. So I gave them my 2 cents. That kind of catapulted me on like a bit of a podcasting circuit, you might say. And then people convinced me to start my own YouTube channel, and I started just cranking out 5-10 minute videos on really basic like how-tos, how to get over premature ejaculation, how to get over erectile dysfunction, really practical things for guys, and people really resonated with it. And that's been my journey for the last 4 years basically.
Interesting. Okay, I want to ask you a question based off of what you just said in terms of helping guys with advice and actionable tips, right? What is the most common problem guys face besides not being able to get girls?
Yeah, that tends to be the first. If you can't get any girls, you don't have any of these other problems. So, it's like having a parking problem if you don't have a car. So, I'd say their biggest problem usually revolves around like premature ejaculation. That's the most common one, like guys not being able to last as long as they want. And I think the second, like very close follow-up is probably more what you'd call performance anxiety. And it's specifically performance anxiety-induced erectile dysfunction. So basically a guy not being able to get it up around a certain girl. Okay.
So basically creating that anxiety mentally that, I might not perform well. And then they get in their head and they get soft. And it's an never-ending loop.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Correct.
Yeah. So, and guys, what happens in that situation is guys will be like, they'll reach for like a Viagra. Because what guys are like, oh, my dick ain't working.
Solution.
Blue pill. Here's the problem. That's a Band-Aid for a start, and it's not the cause of your problem. Your boner issues aren't caused by a lack of Viagra. Your boner issues are caused because you're in these anxious mental thought patterns, right? Because if the dude's getting like morning wood, or if he's not having this problem with other women, but this one particular girl, this one particular circumstance, he's struggling.
That makes it even worse.
It's even worse, right? And then he comes to me, he's like, what the hell, bro? I don't know what's going on. I'm like, bro, you got performance anxiety. It's simple. It's easy. The problem is that it's a bit harder to treat because it is a purely mental problem, right? So that, like, if it was just a physical thing, if it was just like, your blood flow, your cardiovascular health sucks, that's easy. We can fix that in like a month or two. That's super easy. Eat better, do some sprints, get the right nutrition in your body. Not only will you fix your boner problems, but you'll stop yourself from getting a heart attack in like 20 years, which is great. But with the performance anxiety stuff, we've got to like kind of break down like, okay, well, why are you getting anxiety? Like, let's start really simple. What's the trigger? Is it a situation? Is it a phrase? Is it a sex act? Is it a person? Like, what's triggering the heart rate to like start jumping up?
Spike that cortisol.
Yeah. And what's your brain to start going down those like negative thought patterns? So you got to identify that trigger first. Then we've got to find a way to like break the pattern. Then we've got to find a way to replace the pattern. There's a few steps involved in it.
Interesting. I want to ask another question deeper about that, peeling that layer back. Excuse me. Do you think that most guys are having these mental problems because they're lacking high testosterone levels?
that is a big contributing factor, and in fact, it's not specifically testosterone, it's DHT.
Okay.
So DHT, dihydroxytestosterone, is actually 10 times more androgenic than testosterone itself, and it is what actually causes men to have that kind of cool, calm confidence.
Just that swagger.
Yeah. Like the ability to tolerate stress is directly correlated to your DHT levels. Guys often conflate like high testosterone with all these really positive attributes, and that's not necessarily true. Most of these positive attributes guys think are caused by testosterone are actually caused by DHT. So if you can manipulate your biochemistry a little bit to get better DHT levels, you will typically find your stress tolerance is way better and your anxiety and nervousness goes right down.
I completely agree. I want to touch on that too because I spent, like around 2 years studying hormones and stuff like this because I had low test when I was younger. And I was like more anxious. I was more on edge. I didn't feel that confident. Now, game's different. So I also want to add on to that point of saying DHT is a very important factor by saying, in my mind, I believe that higher test levels, that's an automatic downstreaming kind of term or downstreaming thing for DHT to be higher too.
Yes.
I think the main problem that guys are facing right now, besides low T and low DHT, is high estrogen levels.
Yes.
Because the more estrogen you have, the more emotional you are. And the more emotional you are, the more fucking sporadic you are.
Completely.
So would you, this is going to be controversial, would you kind of perhaps advise or suggest people to look into hormone replacement therapy or no?
Well, okay, depends on what age you are. I think if you're a guy in like your 20s, you don't need to worry about that shit. I think once you're like 35 and up, if you are noticing a decline in your energy levels, your arousal, you're not getting morning wood anymore, things like this, I think, like 34, 35, 36-ish, that's the time to look into it. I wouldn't advise it if you plan on having kids, because it's going to fuck with your fertility. And on top of that, irrespective of what age you are, you definitely always get a blood test. Like you need to know, it's helpful to know what your levels are, all these things, so you can address it. Like you might think it's a testosterone problem, it might be something else. You might have like mold toxicity or some shit. There's a bunch of things that could be contributing to these to low energy or low sex drive or whatever. So getting a blood test is the first thing I'd say guys should be doing. And then in regards to reducing estrogen, like you said, there's a lot of really easy lifestyle changes guys can make that can help to reduce their estrogen levels.
Like what?
A really easy one is sauna, like regular saunas. Especially, and I'll add on top of this, before you jump in a sauna, like three 20-minute sessions of sauna a week. It's pretty good. That also reduces your risk of all-cause mortality by about 50%. Like it's amazing for your cardiovascular health and overall health.
Why is that?
I think it's mostly to do with the infrared light that penetrates your skin, and it's to do with the way it works on your cardiovascular system. But the other thing it does, and this relates to the estrogen stuff we're talking about, is sauna is one of the few things that can allow your body to get rid of estrogen mimicking compounds that are stored in your fat cells. So that your fat cells are where all these artificial estrogens will sit and hide, right? So things like phthalates from plastics, right? Also from the inside of tin cans as well, unfortunately. Estradiol from the birth control pill that makes its way into the water supply and in your shower heads. The skin is actually your biggest, it's an organ.
Yeah, it absorbs shit.
Correct, yeah. This is very doom and gloom talking about all this shit, but unfortunately it's true. And there's a million... You could spend all your life focusing on the minutiae of all this stuff and being a total hypochondriac. That's not my intent for people to go down that path. But there's obviously a few real key things you can do which improve that. With the water stuff, getting a Berkey filter, I like an activated charcoal filter. Great. Filters that stuff out of your drinking water, happy days. With the sauna stuff, getting in the sauna allows you to sweat all that stuff out. But more importantly, you should be taking 20 minutes before you get in the sauna, you should be taking some activated charcoal, which allows, activated charcoal is basically the same thing that would be in a Berkey water filter. The charcoal there can bind to organic compounds. Estrogen mimicking compounds like estradiol, phthalates, these are organic compounds. I used to be a chemist, so this language is native to me. But when you take activated charcoal, you give your body something to bind to all these toxins you're trying to get rid of, so they don't get reabsorbed again when you try to get them out of your system in the first place. So activated charcoal and then a 20-minute sauna.
Interesting. So the charcoal is kind of like a filter system to, you said, attach to these things and pull them out of you, I guess, by sweating and pissing?
It's like an internal, well, it's got to be inside of you. And like as your body's in a sauna, you're going to sweat some stuff out and other stuff's going to try and like leak out into like the internal systems you have. And the activated charcoal is going to be able to bind to those things, and you basically eventually excrete those out of your body.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
There we go.
Activated charcoal is a big one. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Then I want to jump more into the dating sides of things, because that's where your specialty is. That's what you're always helping people do, right? So before I ask specific tactical questions for dating and shit for people watching, right? How did you get into the info product space and create a digital product to mentor and also coach guys?
Yeah, well, I started, I literally, like I mentioned before, the first book I wrote was an info product. I had friends like 5 years prior who were email marketers, copywriters, info product guys. So I was kind of familiar with the concepts. Yeah. I understood what all that stuff was before I ever got into the space. Okay. Which is interesting for me because I think there's a lot of people don't even know that world exists. Maybe in America they do. In Australia they don't. Like the idea of like a copywriter is like, what the hell's a copywriter? Like no one, I don't know. I never knew anyone in Australia who had heard of what a copywriter even was when I was growing up. You know, but Americans know all that stuff because Americans are like all very entrepreneurial. I find that interesting. But yeah,
culture in a way.
It's a very different culture. Yeah, it's a very entrepreneurial culture. And yeah, so I sort of started with that intent. Once I kind of saw that there was an opportunity there. I was like, well, okay, I have all this experience and all this knowledge, and no one else is really teaching this, especially a dude with my experience. There's a lot of women in like the sexual education space online, and I'm not trying to be a dick, but unfortunately they're very lovey-dovey in the way they teach. It's all about like healing and love and chakras and getting in touch with your inner feminine. And no, none of that shit. Get your dick out and fucking be a man. Like none of that shit's going to help you as a dude. I personally don't think any of that shit's going to help.
I'm on the same page as you.
Like, you know, it's not. we're not. Fuck her like a caveman. You know, fuck her like a Roman legionnaire coming back from the Teutoburg forest who just slaughtered a bunch of, you know, barbarians, and now he's come home to take his wife. That
motherfucker.
That's the kind of like character you want to embody with your missus, because that's how she wants to be taken.
Very true.
She doesn't want like the lovey-dovey rose petals, like gently laying you down onto the pillow, like, oh, can I touch you here? No, that's gonna dry her up.
Very true. I want to attach my own input too, because I used to be a guy that watched red pill content online a few years ago, not that long ago. I got introduced to the space through Fresh and Fit.
Yep.
They were the guys that kind of connected me to people like Sneeko. We filmed together a while ago, and from there, things with the podcast and stuff like that has taken off. But back then, like, I was watching their content, trying to learn shit. Because I was always like more of like the nerd side person in high school. I was studying crypto. Nice. I was positioning myself. I could see the future that people didn't see, and I was always fucking like, I don't want to say discredited, but like pushed aside a little bit. I wasn't a fucking full-on nerd. I was cool with the cool kids, cool with the nerds, back and forth type thing. But I never had that much success with girls in dating when I was in like middle school and the beginning parts of high school. And it always pissed me off. Obviously, right? But going back to your point where girls don't want to be treated as like lovey-dovey, like fucking Mr. Nice Guy. They don't. Like, in my mind, I want to hear your opinion too. In my mind, you want to have a good balance of the kind, sweet side, but not afraid to fucking turn on that aggressive side. I don't want to say aggressive, but assertive side.
Yeah.
And dominant side, where she knows you can fucking pick her up or do some shit to get her really turned on really quickly. Yeah. I think it's a very good balance, because if you're just that guy that's only assertive or only... I don't know the right word to describe it. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
I know exactly what you're trying to say. The guy that doesn't have any of that like loving, caring side to him is like the guy who is like the psychopath.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
He's the guy who like robs the convenience store.
Yeah.
But what you said, that loving, nurturing side, you only really have the leeway to show that to a woman after you've already established to her that you have that dominant.
Correct.
Side where you can set boundaries, enforce boundaries, lead, protect, keep us like all these are all the things that keep her panties wet, by the way, right? And then because women have this sort of paradox where they want the guy who can like, strangle a bear with his bare hands. And they also want the guy who will, like, look after her.
Princess treatment.
Like, or like, will buy her flowers. And that's the kind of dichotomy. I mean, men have a similar dichotomy. We have the Madonna whore complex.
Yeah.
Right? Where we want the marry the virgin, but we lust after the whore.
Yeah.
And that's kind of human nature.
I believe so as well.
We have, these two sides to us. We have a light side and a dark side. And yeah, with men, they make maybe they don't make the mistake deliberately, but I feel like they've been convinced, or at least our generation, or I mean, would be millennial or Zoomer?
I'm 23, so whatever that is.
You'd be Zoomer, I think. Yeah, I'm millennial, you're Zoomer. Like, that's 2 generations minimum. Actually, and my brother's at Generation Gen X. That's like at least 3 generations of people telling men from day one, be a nice guy, be a nice guy. Like, like, oh, don't be toxically masculine. Don't be this guy over here who actually turns women on. Don't be that. No, women don't want that. They want lovey-dovey guy over here who can be easily manipulated, who can be taken advantage of, who will be divorce raped, all this kind of stuff. So guys are coming to these spaces like the Red Pill space or whatever, or my channel or whatever. They're coming there because, well, they've done all this stuff for like 20, 30 years.
No results.
And nothing worked. So what else is there to lose? Let's try something else. And lo and behold, so the something else actually gets results.
I think it's pretty funny. It's a shame though, because
it is a shame.
It's a shame because most people are, whether it is dating stuff related or even just general information, we're always taught bullshit, and then it takes that own self-education to unleash the freedom that you always want.
Completely, yeah. I mean, that's the difference between like a normie,
yeah,
and someone who's successful, right?
Exactly.
They question the narrative. They're disagreeable to a large degree. There's a strong correlation between success and disagreeableness, right? True. I think I'm quoting Jordan Peterson there, which is a bit unfortunate these days.
Fucking weak as
he's
fuck.
He's kind of gone off the off the deep end a little bit these days.
Yeah.
But regardless, that one point he made was actually true. He needs to get back to cleaning his room.
Yeah, besides him crying on camera and shit.
Besides all that,
ridiculous.
That's another thing. I don't think men should cry in front of their women and stuff like that. I think that's
the only time I see it semi-okay is if it's actually something serious, like a parent dies.
Yeah,
or
like
something like that.
Like a family member dying or a dog.
Yeah.
I think the dog is acceptable.
Not a cat.
Not a cat. Not a cat. Fuck cats. No. Men shouldn't have cats. Cats are stupid. The only acceptable cat is a barn cat, in my opinion, because at least it catches mice and does something for like if you have a farm.
Yeah. It's helping you at least.
It's helping, like a dog can again, this is a bit controversial. I think dogs should only be like useful breeds.
So no chihuahuas.
I'm not a fan of
you're pissing
chihuahuas.
off
I'm
so
not a fan
many
of
people.
chihuahuas, doodles, all these like handbag dogs.
How about Pomeranians?
Yeah, fuck no, they're stupid. Like that thing is useless to you. Get like a German Shepherd, a Belgian Malinois, something that's going to defend you.
My girl wants a Pomeranian.
Oh my god,
Is that bad?
it's bad for you. You have to deal with it.
Shit. I want to know exactly how you said you were going on a podcast runs before, you were connecting with cool people, and then all of a sudden it seems like you came out of nowhere and we're connecting with people like Justin Waller, Tate, the biggest names in the manosphere, right? Even Rollo, like you said. So how did that kind of act as a stepping stone to connecting with the highest caliber personal brands in the online space?
Well, I think I was very fortunate in that I connected with a lot of these people in the early stages of their career or on their way up. Like Fresh and Fit, for example.
Yeah.
I was one of the first. Me and Sarah J. I think were the first ever in-person guests on their show.
Really?
In their original studio in Miami.
Yeah. On the road.
Yeah. So there's that one example, right? Obviously, I connected to them through Rollo. Me and Rollo had a great relationship. Justin and I met each other, and then we actually lived together in Midtown. So there was that, and then obviously I met Andrew and Tristan Tate and stuff. Yeah, and I always kind of took this approach of like, there's a really good book I like called Trust Me, I'm Lying, Confessions of a Media Manipulator by Ryan Holiday. And in this book, he talks about how he was able to dupe, not that I duped anyone, but this all makes sense, how he was able to dupe journalists into writing about him and his stories or the businesses he was representing. And his strategy involved reaching out to a very small niche blog or something about whatever company he was representing and leaking a story to them and then getting written about there. And then he would move up like the food chain to a slightly bigger blog.
The ranks, yeah.
Yeah. And leak the story again. And oh, by the way, this blog already wrote about it. And then he would just repeat that process infinitum until he got to the very top of the food chain. Right? He's on Huffington Post or New York Times or CNN or whatever.
The biggest, yeah.
Yeah. Oddly enough, I'd actually applied that exact same process 10 years ago with my first ever startup from the comfort of my living room in Australia. And I got written about in London newspapers, American newspapers and stuff. People don't really know this, but I already applied that principle, right? And so I kind of took the same principle and applied it to going on podcasts. It's okay, I've been on this. I was very fortunate, and the first one I went on was Rolo, which is a very big one in the space. It's okay, well, there's a lot of credibility attached to that, and I could leverage that credibility to connect with guys like Fresh and Fit, to connect with a bunch of other guys, and so the ease of access to bigger and bigger podcasts made perfect sense. It snowballed very, very easily. Yeah, but I think the strategy in itself is something anyone can apply. You don't necessarily have to go for the big fish straight away. You can humble yourself a bit, realize where you're at on the totem pole, and more importantly, what you have to offer.
Correct.
I was in a unique position, and I had a unique angle to talk about dating, relationships, red pill, sexual dynamics. I had a unique angle to talk about it from, given my background in the sex industry. So that helps as well.
Correct. I'm glad you mentioned that too. You mentioned the word access, because as you talk to one person, 2, 4, 8, it multiplies, right? Mm-hmm. And the more shows, more whatever you're talking about, people get to know your face more and see your beliefs and know who you are. That unlocks so much untapped value that otherwise would not be available to tap into.
Yeah.
Now, I want to mention personal branding things, because every single person I talk to has their own personal brand, at least in Miami, even back home in Scottsdale where I live, right? So what do you think, do you see a future of only big personal brands being the ones that are the big money makers, are the ones that have the access? Where do you see that future at?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where we're heading. If you look at everything that every social media company is doing, people are creating brands overnight on TikTok. They're coming from being a nobody. I think, what's that song it's been going viral for 2 months now on TikTok, the Dirt Man song? You guys seen that at all?
Honestly, no.
Okay. Well, anyway, if you've been on TikTok the last couple of months, you probably heard of the Dirt Man song, whatever. It's just some dude fucking around in his apartment with a green screen making stupid music. And now in that one particular tune, it went viral. People were singing it on actual stages in actual concerts and stuff like that.
That exposure's crazy.
Yeah, so it's nuts. The threshold to stardom or celebrity is so below. It's never been this low. So why wouldn't you take advantage of that and create a personal brand? Mm-hmm. And I've also heard this stated from a guy called another Red Pill guy, Ryan Stone. He mentioned this years ago. Actually, he said dating is now actually personal branding, and that is a really interesting way of looking at dating. If you look at Instagram, what is it? Instagram is a dating app, and it's a personal branding app, right? Which guys in Miami get access to the most women? It's probably the guy with the best personal brand, the best Instagram, the guy who sells himself the best.
Yep.
Right? That's the world we're living in now. Mm-hmm. If you choose to partake in that. And this is why everyone's sort of leaning away from traditional corporate brands and more towards personal brands. One, because they're relatable. They're people. There's a face. You can know, like, and trust a person far easier than you can know, like, and trust a nameless, faceless brand, right? Like Pfizer or GM or whatever. But here's the other really cool thing, is that personal brands now have the ability to take down and discredit these traditionally old school corporate brands. People can go on and do exposés on companies and on brands and just destroy their stock price, destroy their credibility. It's actually quite...
It's happened recently.
It's happened a lot recently. Yeah. It's quite empowering when you think about it to the average person. If you are dedicated to your craft, you can actually make a significant impact now. Whereas before, 20 years ago, we probably couldn't. We were a lot more at the behest of these big megacorps.
Mm-hmm. I see the future of being ran by solo creators and maybe a team of 5, 10 people, maybe 20 people if you're an actually big personal brand. The outliers like Belmar, Tate, Iman, for example, right? They have big teams, but you don't need to be somebody of that massive influence to have impact, whether it's going to be for making money online offer, a sexual relationship offer, whatever it may be. You need to have your core group of people that support you in a ride or die. And that's how you're going to separate yourself from the fucking regular people that are stuck in the matrix, essentially. Right. And create a life that you actually want to live, where you're able to connect with cool people. You were fucking in 4 places before you came here.
Yeah.
Why don't you jump into that?
Yeah. I went from Spain to Dubai to London to here in the space of about 48 hours.
And all filming podcasts, you said, right?
Yeah, filming podcast. Yeah,
exactly.
And I'm going to keep doing it. And then I'm going LA, Vegas, New York, continuing the same process.
And this just creates that leverage of the brand to get your name out there even further. Once you start it, it starts to snowball and create that positive feedback loop of just acquisition, notoriety, awareness, and solidifying yourself as an authority figure in the space.
And if you get, and I generally think it like creates real friendships. Like
For sure.
A bunch of the people I've done podcasts, not all of them, but a bunch of the people I've done podcasts with, we've ended up becoming genuine friends.
Yeah.
And when you have that real personal relationship with somebody, well, they're like, we're in touch with each other because of Justin, for example.
Correct.
Right. Like when you have a real personal relationship with people, they will recommend you to other people, and they will connect with other people. Mm-hmm. So it's a very exponential effect. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's I always say this shit. It's just the most high leverage thing you can do. Fucking networking is cringe in my mind.
Yeah.
I think you have to be somebody first to get access to the type of people you want to talk to.
Yeah. Or you have to be like an outlier in terms of charm.
That too.
Like if you're like, for example, I have to go to New York for a affiliate conference in a couple of weeks.
Is that Affiliate Summit?
Yes.
Okay.
You gonna be there?
I'm not gonna be there, but I know about it. I know a lot of people that go there.
Right. If you're watching this and you're gonna be there, say hi. Yeah, but like I have to turn my charm on and to meet, to network with a bunch of guys that I've never met before. Right. That is a particularly. That's not an easy thing to do. That's a particularly unique skill set, right? Yeah. Most people can't do it. I'm not saying I'm an expert at it. I think Justin, for example, is amazing at it. He's a phenomenal networker, like old school classical networker, right? Most people don't have that skill set though. They don't. And so things like this are a lot more accessible for the average person than the person with average social skills even.
Okay, that's a good point. This is funny too. I'm gonna go to a quick story time with you. Back when I was 20 years old, I'm only 23. It's just like three and a half years ago, right? Not that long ago. I was going to the food store, like grocery store, and I would walk up to random girls to get cold approach experience, just to get over that little hump of anxiety I used to have, right? For somebody watching right now, what do you think the most beneficial and high leverage activity they can do to overcome that approach anxiety and just anxiety in general when talking to women?
Random throwaway compliments. And I mean, and let me specify here. Random throwaway compliments to women you are not in any way, shape, or form attracted to. So, the grandma, the old lady, the fat girl in the left.
Like your walker, Granny.
I wouldn't say that. No, when I mean throwaway compliment, I mean like, that dress looks lovely on you. Have a fantastic day. And then, like, not sitting there and expecting a conversation. Like, you're just throwing out positivity to this random woman, not expecting anything back. And it does, I think, subconsciously, deep, if we break that down a bit, it does two things. One, you will feel good about yourself because you just made someone's day. And you be genuine with it, like, if I see an old lady or a fat lady, I'm like, your hair looks fantastic today. Keep it up. And then I just walk off. There's no pressure for her to be there's no awkwardness. I haven't put any pressure on her to continue a conversation. I'm not hitting on her. I've just walked away. Yeah. But I do feel she feels better. Yeah. I know I've just made her feel better, so I feel better about myself. It's actually kind of selfish giving someone a random compliment like that. It's actually a very selfish thing. But what's happening is I'm programming my subconscious mind to associate feeling awesome with talking to strangers, right? Okay. And two, I'm teaching my subconscious mind to not be needy and not be awkward and not expect anything from that conversation. There's no expectations on that person to reciprocate or continue a conversation with me. And I think if the average autistic guy could just learn those two things, he would do a lot better.
I want to add on that point too, because I think it's very, very true. When you can become outcome independent
That's it.
of anything, whether it's that sale, whether it's that new client, whether it's that new person you want to connect with and you're kind of being fucking needy with them, or that new girl you want to talk to. Yeah. If you're independent of the outcome, that is a state of freedom.
That's it.
That is the point where you're able to say, hey, I did what I wanted to do. Whatever happens, happens. And I'm not going to fucking pressure the other person. That's how relationships flourish. So I think that was a crucial mindset shift for myself to understand and, more importantly, internalize and say, hey, if this goes good, it goes good. I'm going to show up the same way I would either way. If it goes bad, it goes bad. Whatever. I don't give a shit anymore. I'm over it. So on top of the becoming independent of the outcome and then, just throwing out random compliments, maybe not something so tactical for people to improve their dating life, but perhaps psychologically, where do you think an important shift is for somebody to make to step into the individual that demands respect from the girl that they're talking to?
That's a very good question. I think freeing yourself of shame and guilt, because modern society tries to shame and guilt men a lot around a lot of things, around their sexual desires, around being toxically masculine, around setting boundaries, around having standards. Guys get shamed externally from the majority of society for these things. Now, men who are very successful are immune to that. So if you can develop an immunity to shame and guilt, that doesn't mean don't have morals in a sense of values, but they should be internally directed and dictated. You don't let the external world tell you if you're a bad man or not. You should know deep down in your heart, I am a good guy. I know I'm doing right by people. I know what I'm doing. I should not feel guilt or shameful. I'm pursuing things with intent that I want to pursue, like that woman or that business or that opportunity or whatever. So if you can free yourself from the feelings of guilt and shame, that I think most guys will resonate with this, because I know other guys felt it. If you can free yourself of that guilt and shame, that will open you up to a lot of power, a lot of freedom, and ultimately a lot of respect from women and from other men.
I think even before the freeing of shame and guilt is understanding who you are on a deep level when it comes to your character. And you mentioned in terms of understanding internally who you are or who you're not, right? Once you can accept who you are and accept and be comfortable with your own belief system, whether somebody agrees with it or not, at the end of the day, you make your decisions and you're held accountable for your own decisions. So if you can understand that and internalize that, I think that is the first step into getting over those limiting beliefs or getting over these roadblocks mentally that are holding you back in relationships and career. Because if it's going to impact one aspect of your life, it's going to kind of trickle into other aspects too, because it affects how you see yourself. And your reality is pretty much reflected on your own belief system. And if your belief systems are not crafted in a way to be prosperous and free, you're going to create a mental prison for yourself that's going to affect relationships, business, friends, everything, health as well. So that's my rant for today.
I like that. I think to build on that, I think developing a mental model of yourself, which is not necessarily based on like results specifically, especially if you're a young guy or you're starting out on like a route of self-improvement, you're not going to have any results. Like, it's easy for a guy who's, very successful to have confidence and self-esteem. He's like, he can just look back and be like, oh, I did this, 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 and this. Like, these are all my wins, right?
All noted down,
yeah, it's super easy for him to tap into that, right? But a younger guy or a guy is just putting himself out there, he doesn't really have that. So I think a better framework, a mental model to orientate yourself with is less about like what results have I already accomplished or have I accomplished today, and more what actions have I taken that are in the direction I want to go. So if you're fat, did I go to the gym today? Cool. Don't care where you're at. Did you take action towards improving that part of your life? Right? Did I work on my business today? Yes or no? Like you should be developing self-esteem. I think self-esteem and self-belief around yourself through. Are you taking consistent daily action towards the goal you're pursuing? If the answer is yes, you should feel amazing about yourself.
That's incredibly true. And there's been times in my life where you have, big wins and then you have some losses, and then big wins and some losses, like everybody else, right? Yeah. But in those times where you have a big win and then it kind of fades off a little bit, that's the most important time and most crucial time for you to be like, am I showing up every day? Am I putting in the work that's actually going to make a difference? If yes, I feel fucking good. Yeah. Even if the result is not showing and manifesting right now, I know it will down the road.
Absolutely.
So that's a very good point too, what you mentioned and touched on in terms of if you're not there just yet, hold yourself accountable to the daily habits and beliefs that you hold. And eventually it will manifest into being reality.
Because the only thing that really separates like successful people from unsuccessful people is consistency.
Correct.
That's basically it. If you can sit there and like make up all kinds of different theories, like they were born on this star sign. They're like their mum was rich or what? Like they're from this. They went to this Ivy League school, so therefore no. Are they consistent? It's really simple as that. Who turns out, like, look at all the really successful like NBA players, AFL players, NFL players, or whatever. Who turned up to practice the most? Yep. Who did the most free throws? Who put the most effort in? It's just a game of consistency, and that applies to everything.
Whether it is in the business, taking those actions, or perhaps for me, what it was when I was 16 and 17 was studying a specific market and sub-niche of a market to understand it in and out, and then position myself to benefit when things changed. And that's what happened. Whether it's going to be, you got to take action either way, right? People get stuck up in the consuming and mental masturbation. And I know many people in the space talk about that, but I think it's a very important thing to address. Even one of my friends out here, he wasted over a year of his life. He's successful now, but he wasted over a year of his life consuming content. And not taking action on it.
Yeah.
It's like, bro, you need to learn and then take action instantly.
I think a good rule of thumb is for every hour of content you consume, you should do 2 hours of work.
Okay, that's a good law. It's a good rule.
Right?
Yeah.
If you're going to sit down and watch like this podcast, however long we end up being, like an hour to an hour and a half, okay, that's 2-3 hours worth of work you need to sit down and do.
Okay. I completely agree with that. Otherwise, what's the information without the implementation?
Yeah, it's useless.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Information is free nowadays. Information is dispersed everywhere. You can go pirate any course you want, right? You can learn anything you want. It's about, are you implementing it or not? I've had people pay for mentorship programs. They're in it for 4-8 weeks. They do some action, and then they're like, you know what? I don't think it's for me, man. I'm not going to charge back or do anything weird like that or kind of refund, but I'm just going to move on to something else. It's like, bro, going back to the point in terms of sticking through things when the results are not manifesting in real life, it's a delayed gratification game. Yeah. And it's a game of hockey stick growth, because you need to show up every single day and prove yourself to whatever you believe, whether it's God or the universe and even yourself, that you are worthy of achieving that level of success. Because if you don't stay consistent, you're cooked.
Yeah. I think that's I think consistency, the ability to tolerate stress, and
that's very important,
and the ability to delay gratification, which kind of ties into consistency as well, to be honest. But those 3 attributes are super vital for anyone who wants to pursue an entrepreneurial career or have a business and have any element of success. If you can't tolerate stress, if you can't delay gratification,
you're done.
Yeah, good luck. Just work at Starbucks. Like
literally,
there's no point.
Literally. Okay, I'm glad we jumped into the mindset business side of things, because I've watched a few podcast clips, and most of the time people are just talking about the sex ed stuff.
Yeah, so I'm a lot smarter than people will give me credit for.
Yeah, for real. And I'm glad we jumped into it, because it shows the perspective of you as well, where your fan base and your supporters will learn a new aspect of you that's very valuable.
Yeah.
So
I don't tend to go into the details of my business in my own content. So
well, yeah, I mean, it's your own personal brand.
Exactly.
Your personal brand's around
for obvious reasons. Yeah. But that's the thing. Like, even if
the diehard fans will watch it.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, like, even if you're a hater of me, right? You don't agree with my previous professions and stuff, which I totally understand. I get. Or you don't like some of the friends I have. Cool. They're my friends. Go fuck yourself. But irrespective of that, you could still learn from everything we just said.
Exactly.
Because everything I just said, whether you like me or not, was factually correct. Yeah. Right. because it's consistent across multiple successful people.
Correct. And if it's repeated by several people, obviously there's a fucking pattern now.
Yeah.
But let's jump into. I want to change gears, shift gears, and transition into something regarding you. You mentioned it earlier. You were here fucking 4 places before coming here and traveling and stuff like this, right? You've been around the world a bunch. I think you said you've been to 32 countries. Is that right?
31?
31, 32.
If I sat down and counted them all out, I did before when we were talking. I was trying to count them all out.
Out of all the places you've been to, what has been the worst country you've been to?
The worst? Ooh. In terms of what specifically?
Yeah, let me rephrase that. Out of all the countries you've been to, what has been the worst country in terms of lifestyle? Like overall quality of life.
Probably Peru.
That sounds like dog shit.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, when I was living there, actually I was living in Lima. I was living in a slum on the outskirts of Lima. We were doing like
Lima, where's that?
Lima is the capital of Peru.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was in the slums on the outside. We were doing like charity work, like teaching English and stuff to kids there. Yeah, it was a bit of a shithole. Gonna be honest. Yeah, would not like I can go to like a shithole and have a great time.
Get drunk, right?
Party. Because people are like, okay, like as an example, I lived in favelas in Brazil for a little bit, right? Super fun, super dangerous. Like literally, the dudes across the road from us had machine guns, but super fun. Peru, not so much. Not so much. Yeah.
No fun and nothing.
Not trying to shit on Peruvians. Just answering your question. I mean, off the top of my head, yeah, like it was, deserty, dusty, very dusty. Yeah.
Okay.
Fat abuelas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned Brazil. Then I remember reading when we were texting. You were, I think, held at either gunpoint or knife point in Brazil. Is that right?
Knife point.
Okay.
Was robbed. Yeah.
What was the
I didn't get robbed. I got out of it.
Okay. What was the story of you kind of getting to the point of being fucking held hostage at knife, essentially?
So I was a dumbass. So I'm usually very situationally aware, right? And I know Brazil is a danger. This is actually the 3rd time I'd been to Brazil, and I got robbed. Like the first 2 times I was fine, didn't cock up at all, because I had my head on a swivel, right? And this particular time, I'd flown in late, and my buddy had joined me. It was actually for my birthday, and I was waiting around for a couple of hours, and he flew in. And we're like, oh, let's celebrate. We hadn't seen each other for ages. Let's celebrate. We went for a walk on Copacabana Beach. Blue jeans, dressed like a gringo, speaking English really loudly, like 2 a.m. in the morning. Dumb idea. Right. So I knew from the start, like once that happened, I was like, this should have happened. Like there's no reason this shouldn't have happened. And we're walking along, and then this guy, actually 2 guys, come up to us, and one of them had a big, what do you guys call it here in America? Like a
jumper,
a blanket.
Oh,
a big like the cover you put on top of a bed, like the thicker one, like a duvet. You know what I'm talking about?
Hell no. I don't
the big thick blanket you put on top of a bed.
A comforter.
A comforter. Cool. He had a comforter draped around his body. Right. And he looked like it was like old and dirty. I was like, oh, this guy's a homeless guy. And he came up to us asking for a cigarette. He was like, fuma, asking for a cigarette. I'm like, oh, no, we haven't got a cigarette. And then he opens up the comforter, and he's got this big fucking like chef's knife in his hand. And he goes to my buddy first, and he's like, and we're both sitting there like, shit. So he gets my buddy to get his. There was another guy there with him too, who didn't have a knife, and he came to me. So the guy with the knife goes to my buddy. He's like, gets him to get his wallet out, pulls out his wallet. He takes like a couple hundred. I think he lost like €300 USD or something like that.
Is it a lot down there?
Is it what?
Is that a lot of money down there?
That's a lot in Brazil. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. That guy had a payday.
Come up.
He had to come up, and that happened. That was in the space of like 2-3 seconds. So by the time that happened, I'm like, hang on a second, like this guy's got a knife. This guy goes to me, he's like, give me your phone, and I realized really quickly these guys don't speak any fucking English, and I'm like, all right, Sam, when I say just run in opposite directions now, and the 2 of us sprinted in the opposite direction. So these 2 guys are sitting there with their dick in their hand because he's run that way down the beach. I'm from this way down the beach. Yeah. They're like, and then they just like ran back into the shadows, and I'm like, that fucking worked.
Good shit.
Yeah, and then we regrouped and we went home and we had a laugh about it. But I was like, I had this in my hand. He's like, give me your phone. I'm like, I'm giving you my fucking phone. Get the fuck out of here. No.
Yeah. That was
I'm getting out of it. I'm getting out of this with my phone. Thank you very much.
that was sharp thinking in the moment to kind of disperse and kind of like throw them off.
Yeah, like you got to distract the fucker, right?
A lot of the guys are pussies anyways that do that shit. They can't even fucking fight. That's why they have a weapon.
Yeah. I mean, this guy was scrawny as hell. Like he wasn't like fighting anybody.
Bro rolled up in the drip of a comforter.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
But it was a clever disguise, right? He dressed up like a homeless bum. I'm like, and then he hid a knife out of the guy. I gotta respect the guy. It was a good grift.
When you're creating the environment as a guy, that guy, right? What do you think is the most important trait for a guy to create the environment for a girl to fall into his frame?
He's got to have clear boundaries and mostly importantly, enforce them, right? So she has to be able to respect you, right? For her to fall into your frame, she has to first be able to respect you in the first place, right? And like want to respect you, look up to you, and follow your lead. Mm-hmm. So how can you do that? How can you make a woman actually respect you? Well, you can have a pair of balls, have some self-esteem, and have boundaries. Men who women look up to and respect are men who have boundaries. Likewise, actually, the men that other men respect are men with boundaries. If you're a complete pushover, nobody respects you, right? So what are we talking about in terms of boundaries when it comes to like a relationship context or a sexual context with a woman? It can really be anything you want, but it can be simple things like, okay, one example I used to do is I hate when women wear jeans on a date. It's like the least feminine thing I can think of. Yeah. So I would say before we meet up, like, don't wear jeans. If you wear jeans, I am going home. Like, pretty clear, right? Or I would say things like another thing I've done very frequently in the past on dates. I will stop a woman from drinking if I think she's had too much to drink. Okay. If I can see she's a lightweight, she's had she had one drink and two drinks, she's like having way too much, and then she goes to order another one. I will tell her, I will stop the waiter. I'm like, no, you're not getting her a drink. Get her a water instead. And I will tell her, look her in the eye, like, you're drinking water right now. Like, I'm not fucking. It's not a joke. I'm not fucking around. I'm looking her in the eye. It's kind of like a dad disciplining his daughter in a way, right? Yeah. And I've literally had verbatim from women say, like, after that has happened, verbatim they've said that was the sexiest thing a guy's ever done. It's telling her not to have a fucking drink. Telling her to drink water.
But it's how you're saying it.
Exactly.
It's the frame of how you're saying it.
It's the context of it. It's the fact that I'm putting a boundary down and I'm enforcing that boundary. She can tell you to leave it. If she says no, I'm gonna. If she says no, she knows I'm walking home. Like,
either way, yeah.
I don't care. I've got no vested interest in this going well.
That goes back to the outcome independent mindset.
Correct.
Because you're not like, okay, one more drink, baby. Like whatever you say, baby. Like that shit's so gay. Yeah, the ability to take it or leave it, the ability to walk away is really the only power a dude actually has. Yeah. Really, like. And you'd think women would have figured that out by now. I think they deal with so many weak guys that when a stronger guy comes around, they're like, wow, I like this guy. Because it brings them to their femininity. Yeah. And that's their true state of where they thrive. As for a guy, when he's in his leading masculine frame, that's where we thrive the most. Yeah. And when you have that yin and yang, it's like, we're the fucking goated couple right now in this fucking establishment.
Everyone's happy. And goated.
I know, it's fucking OG terminology.
I love it.
One of my last questions then is, oh yeah, that's right. It kind of carries into what we're talking about already in terms of how girls have that value and perceived value for the guy they're talking to, right? The whole thing is girls only sleep with guys of equal or higher value than they see themselves as, or at least perceived value. What can a guy do to increase that value?
Yeah, I mean the obvious answer the guys will have heard before is like, like make more money, get better looking, like is in hit the gym, improve your health, improve your dress sense, your style, right? Improve your network. These are really obvious answers, right? I want to throw a different sort of frame on this for guys, and this will help you. I think this will help guys a lot mentally, and that is, if a woman is going to sleep with you, it implies subconsciously she thinks you're better than her. That might piss a few people off hearing that, but the idea of like, women basically date up, right? They don't date bums. They don't date losers.
Unless they have complete shit self-esteem.
Well, that's an interesting thing, right? This is a bit of a segue, but I'm glad you brought that up. Have you ever seen a situation, right, where a girl and a guy will be in a relationship together, and the guy's a great guy, and objectively he ticks all the boxes on paper, right? Like he's good looking, makes a bunch of money, whatever, he's connected, and he treats her really well. And then she will cheat on him or leave him. Here's why that happens. It's because specifically, she'll cheat on him or leave him for a dude who treats her like a piece of shit. And here's why that happens. Because in her mind, her self-esteem, her perception of herself is like closer to the way the guy who treats like a piece of shit's reality. Like in her mind, she's like, I'm a piece of shit. This guy's treating me really well. He's a loser. Whereas this guy over here who treats me like a piece of shit, that lines up with my own self-belief. So I'm going to go with that guy.
And it validates her own self-belief.
Bingo.
Fuck, that's crazy.
Isn't it nuts?
It is nuts.
Isn't it fucking nuts? But yeah, if guys can look at this from the perspective of like, if she's going to get with you in the first place, then she automatically thinks that you're better than her in some way, shape, or form. And you got and what I just said then, you got to kind of realize like where is her own level of self-esteem at? Because you can't save everybody, and some people will default to their basic instincts and their worst nature if they don't think they deserve a guy like you. Honestly, so what can you do to for women to perceive you as higher value? We'll go back to what we just said a minute ago, which is having boundaries. Because if you look at let's paint a picture, right? The guy who is objectively a bum, but still gets the girl. I'm sure many guys have seen this in their life. They've known a guy. They've seen a guy in high school. They've seen a guy whatever after high school, after college, whatever, who's objectively a bum, but for some reason there's something about him that gets girls. And what does he have that gets women? Well, probably 3 traits. 1, he sets boundaries. 2, he's disagreeable, which shows confidence and balls. And 3, he's a risk taker. If you look at evolutionary psychology, women are attracted to successful risk takers. The problem is
you're cooked.
Well, the problem is if you go back far enough in history, if you were an unsuccessful risk taker, you're just dead. So it doesn't really matter as far as women are concerned. Really, it doesn't matter if he's actually successful or not, because the trait of being a risk taker historically has meant he's successful because he's alive, right? So if a guy's a risk taker, if he's a bad boy, aka risk taker, he's instantly attractive.
I think this has been great. I want to wrap it up. I appreciate you coming on.
Of course, man.
Super chill. Very valuable podcast. If you made it here to the end, congrats to you. You guys are trying to learn better or learn more and improve your life. So I can only credit that action. But without further ado, don't be motivated, stay disciplined, and I'll see you guys in the next video.